All right, I'd like to call to order the November 22nd, 2022 regular school board meeting, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And we've got several people in the audience. Thank you. Mary, can you do the roll call, please?
Yep. Zymet. Here. Palmer. Here. Lewis. Here. Granlund. Here. Mueller.
Here.
Superintendent Stenbeck.
Here.
Thank you. Our mission is creating worlds of opportunity for each and every learner. All belong, all succeed. Our core values are community, excellence, collaboration, integrity, respect, courage, and innovation. We will start with our agenda approval, announcements, and correspondence. First, can we get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Laura, in a second.
Second.
Second by Brenna. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have our announcements. On November 23rd, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, it is a Flex Learning Day. November 24th and 25th, there is no school. December 9th, there is no school. December 13th at 5 p.m., there is a school board subcommittee on policy here in the community room. December 13th, Tuesday at 7 p.m., there's a regular school board meeting here in the community room. December 22nd through January 2nd, there is no school, and January 3rd is a Flex Learning Day. Next, we have correspondence. Superintendent Stenbeck, is there any correspondence?
Chair Mueller, I did receive a letter from the Minnesota School Boards Association notifying us that Member Palmer has received the President's Award for 2022 because she has completed more than 300 or more hours of MSBA-sponsored activities. So she will be honored and recognized at the January 2nd MSBA Leadership Conference. So congratulations, and more information to come, and I will send this your way.
Congratulations. I think that deserves a little bit of a round of applause. No. Congratulations, Laura.
Thank you.
Next, we have our citizen and employee representative communication to the board. At this time, any citizen or employee may briefly address the school board. The board will listen to the brief remarks, ask clarifying questions, and if desired, request that the administration follow up. The board will not take action at this meeting on requests presented at this time. Do we have anybody speaking to the board tonight? Nothing. No? All right, thank you. Next, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Our consent agenda includes the personnel report and the World's Best Workforce Annual Report as presented at the November 9th, 2022 school board meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Molly?
Second.
And second by Mary. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. And next, we'll move on to our acknowledgement of contributions. I will read this and then ask for a motion in a second. This is our acknowledgement of contribution resolution. Whereas Minnesota Statute 123B.02 permits school boards to receive for the benefit of the district bequests, donations, or gifts for any proper purpose and apply the same to the purpose designated. In that behalf, the school board may act as a trustee of any trust created for the benefit of the district and for the benefit of pupils thereof. Therefore, be it resolved by the School Board of Columbia Heights Public Schools, Independent School District Number 13, that the school board accepts with appreciation the contributions detailed in the background in the amount of $13,891.09. The detailed background includes monetary donations. A donation of $50 was made Columbia Heights Public Schools by Nancy Dana for the New York City Study Seminar. The following donations were made to the Columbia Heights Activities Department by the Columbia Heights Athletic Boosters Club. $161 for Girls Soccer Wagon Volunteers, $500 for Girls Lacrosse Wagon Volunteers, $2,000 for Boys and Girls Tennis Support, $3,500 for boys and girls basketball support, $5,000 for new cheer team support, $645 for boys basketball support, $1,000 for Valley View Family Night support, and $1,000 for the purchase of inclusive uniform options. Also included is value in kind. Donation of headphones was made to Highland Elementary by Joan Zarek for student needs, estimated value of $35.09. And a donation of classroom supplies was made to Highland Elementary by Sage Auto for student needs, estimated value of $900. Total fiscal year 2022-2023 monetary contributions to date is $55,641.27. I get a motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Laura, in a second.
Second.
Second by Brenna. Any discussion? Laura?
We say this all the time, and we really, really do mean this, is that we really are incredibly grateful by the generosity of our community.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Mary, can you do the roll, please?
Absolutely. Zimet,
Aye.
Palmer,
Aye.
Lewis,
Aye.
Granlund, I, Mueller.
Aye. And motion carries. Thank you. Next up is our discussion reports and information items. We'll start with reports from members of the board, and we'll start with Brenna tonight.
Well, I was part of the special called meeting last week and the work session that followed. And then we had a community engagement meeting after that. I also was able to attend or help out with the book fair at North Park, which was super fun to see all the kids just love books and reading, and conferences there as well. I've had conversations with Member Granlund and community members as well.
Great. Thank you. Mary?
I was at the work session, both special called sessions, which you were also at that. Yep. I had phone calls with Member Zimet and also some check-ins with Chair Mueller, and I had a wonderful meeting with Superintendent Stenvick and Director Hennekins about the SRO contract and the finances. I think that's it.
Great. Thank you. Laura?
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I attended the 916 Foundation meeting, and I did find out that the gala is going to be held on March 2nd, and I believe it will still be at that wine place. I'll get more information when we have that in line. It's really a great event, and it's not super duper expensive, but it's a really nice. I mean, if you really want to dress up and just have some good times, it's a really nice event. I also attended the special call meeting, the work study session. I had a chair meeting in there. I attended the Valley View PTO. What a great group they are, and they're doing a lot of, I think it's like teacher appreciation and doing some book buys for the classrooms. So, I mean, it's a great organization. I also attended the delegate pre-assembly meeting where the resolutions for the Minnesota State School Board Association, that meeting is going to be held in December. So we had kind of like a primer on the background and the different resolutions that are going to be put forward to the body. So I did attend that. The candidate interviews just prior to this meeting, and I think that should cover it. I think I had conversations with a couple of people at this table, but I'm sorry, it's been a really busy couple of weeks, so I apologize if I don't publicly say I have, that I have spoken with you. I just appreciated your time at the time. So, okay, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Molly?
Thank you. I also attended the special called meeting last week as well as the work session. And then I had a chance to attend the volleyball and football banquets for their end of the season, which was fun to celebrate their successes. And had a phone conversation with Chair Mueller, phone conversation with Superintendent Stenvick, had a meeting with Principal Wynn, thank you. And also lots of conversations with students and parents. A lot of it was around the SRO contract. And then also was here earlier for the candidate interviews for the special appointment.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think most of what I've attended, you all have talked about, but I also have had several conversations with community members and students. I think we all have regarding this SRO contract. I attended the special called meeting last week, as well as our work session and the community engagement subcommittee and the chair meeting last week as well. Also attended our meeting just prior to this one, and also had an opportunity since our last meeting to attend both a high school choir concert and a high school band concert. Those were a lot of fun. It's really great to see the students performing. After one of the band songs, one of the students said, "That last song was my favorite song," and I said, I could tell, because I think it was a lot of their favorite songs. They played that very well with enthusiasm, so that was great to see. I also had conversations with Member Mueller, Member Granlund, Vice Chair Palmer, and Superintendent Stenvick. So thank you all. Superintendent Stenvick, you have a report for us tonight.
Yes, a brief report. Executive Director Nyambwe and I met with parents from the Somali community, and the parents gave great input and ideas for increasing our two-way communication, and they are interested in meeting again later in the year, so that's exciting. I participated in the high school band fundraiser by shopping over the weekend, and they bagged my groceries for me, so that was really fun. They're really doing a lot so they can take their band trip to New York City. I had conversations with Chair Mueller, Vice Chair Palmer, Member Lewis, and met with Member Granlund, and I thank you all for your time.
Great, thank you very much. Next on our agenda, we have the presentation of Norman Staska's American flag. Superintendent Stenvick.
So we'll invite Mr. Staska's family to the table. This evening, Jeffrey McGonigal and his mother, Joan McGonigal Staska, are here to help us honor former Columbia Heights Public Schools band teacher, Norm Staska. And we'll just welcome you and invite you to say a few words.
Sure. Thank you for the work you do, too. It's a challenging job this time, or lately, I think, for board members. It's much appreciated. My name is Jeff McGonigal. My father, just to give a little context, died about 28 years ago, and my mom ran into a friend she had from the University of Minnesota band program who happened to be a band director in Columbia Heights at both the middle school and the high school. He had never married, and she was now a widower, and they got together again and eventually married. Norm was an amazing man. We loved him. We loved that he was part of our family, but we also learned through time how respected he was by music educators in the Twin Cities and even around the state. And sadly, a little over a year ago, he passed away. And the day before he died, he said, "Can you take me to Sarna's so I can meet my friends that are band directors?" And we were the only people in the restaurant when we got there. And I think he met with them for about an hour and a half and just loved it. Band director from Edina, from Brooklyn Center, from around the area. And I just sat and listened to the stories. And the day after, he passed away. And I was so glad he could have that experience in Columbia Heights, a community he loved, so close to the end for him. Then this summer, my mom said, and we got the flag from Fort Snelling, because Norm was in the Navy, and I know he would like it to go to Columbia Heights, and that's when I contacted Superintendent Stenvick and said, we'd like to donate at that. And I don't know, Mom, if you want to say a little bit about Norm.
Well, he was a very dedicated educator. We dated when we were in college, and when we graduated, he announced to me that he was going to sever our relationship because he had a job to do. And fortunately, when he retired and I was a widow, we became reacquainted, and as a consequence, when he passed away, they handed me this flag at Fort Snelling. The first thought that went through my mind was, this has got to go to Columbia Heights High School. So I'm here tonight to present his flag to you people. Thank you.
And with that, there's a donation. I'm glad the band is looking for some funds because Norm is going to contribute to that too.
Thank you so much.
And I will say, if there are any music people paying attention to this broadcast tonight, Norm wrote a couple of, well, actually quite a few scale etude books that have become a staple for music teachers to use all over the country. And they were based on differentiated instruction. He liked to make it comfortable for what students with lower skills and higher skills to be able to perform together in the same band room and have a good experience. And he was very proud of that. And I don't know what else to add.
Well, we leave these materials.
Oh, we can share those, yeah. So I don't know unless there's questions or...
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the board. We are honored to have this gift and very passionate, as I explained to you earlier, with our music program here, and our students are very passionate about their music, as our staff. And this means a lot to us as a district that you would think of us. So thank you very much. We accept this with extreme gratitude.
Did I just leave this here?
Oh, no, we'd like you to come on up and have you share that with us.
Few more pictures.
More pictures.
You guys come over this way. Is this just Chair Miller?
I think so.
Yep.
Yeah, good. I think we already did the pictures.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you again for being here.
Did anybody else on the board wish to say anything?
It's such an honor. You know, I'm the daughter of two veterans, and I know what it means to have that flag and to get it donated. And I'm just really moved by how much passion and love and care he has provided to this school district and will continue to provide. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I feel like it's hard to segue from that, but we will do that and move on to our American Indian Education Program. So we have Superintendent Stenvik and Val Larson.
Of course, I'm out of practice on sharing and doing all this, but. All right. All right, good evening, Chair Mueller and members of the board. This evening, I'm so pleased to have our American Indian mentor, Valerie Larson, along with one of our American Indian Parent Advisory Committee chair members, Laura Newton. Our mission in Columbia Heights Public Schools is creating worlds of opportunity for each and every learner. All belong, all succeed. And we'll be focusing on the core values of community, integrity, and respect. And of course, our core values are aligned with the CHPS School Board of Education Equity Statement. This is an informational update. There'll be no governance question to follow. And with that, I believe I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Valerie Larson.
Bonjour. Yes, I am glad to be here tonight. Thank you, Board of Directors, for having us here for this update. We have quite a few new members of the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee this year, and they're very hardworking, and we meet the first Wednesday of every month. So maybe if anybody's interested in stepping in and joining us, you'd be welcome. We have monies, of course, with federal and state dollars combined. For the goals and the metrics, one of the goals that we have, our longstanding goal is for every student to graduate, every American Indian student to graduate, and that they're prepared for post-secondary opportunities. It's very interesting because right now, many of the students have already received letters back from the colleges of their choice. And I enjoy, reading those and hearing from them how excited they are to start their the next part of their lives being college students. So it's been wonderful. Um, we really focus a lot on learning literacy, increasing their literacy skills by using cultural books that are, about the American Indian culture. Um, a lot of in the really early grades, we start out by learning their sight words and finding them in books about American Indians written by American Indian authors. Yeah, so they all enjoy the resources and the support that we give all the students.
Can you see goal
Laura?
3, Val?
I can go ahead. So area 3 is that we make curriculum relevant to the needs, interests, and cultural heritage of the American Indian pupils or students at Columbia Heights. Our goal is that to have the curriculum be relevant to the cultural heritage of the students. And we have a satisfaction survey of parents and students with feedback and input that comes when we review the curriculum. Our strategy is to conduct a review of the social studies curriculum and English language arts relevant to the students and how they are being implemented at Columbia Heights Public Schools. Do you want me to go on to this one too,
Yes.
Bill?
Go ahead.
Okay. Area 4 is we provide positive reinforcement of the self-image of American Indian students. So our goal is 100% of American Indian students will have an initial consultation to determine their needs, and we will provide a follow-up with 100% of students that have determined needs. So Val has a roster tracking sheet, and then the strategy is there's this initial consultation with student and parents, and then academic and cultural support provided throughout the school year. Area 5 is developing intercultural awareness with students, parents, and staff. This is a great picture of a event that was held by our APAC committee where we got to learn about pipestone and how it is quarried, I guess, and really like the traditional uses for it and how pipes were made. It was really, really interesting, and a lot of families attended. That was a really great event that we were able to have. One of the goals in this area is for 100% of the American Indian students and family members to report that they feel culturally supported by school staff and interconnected to their heritage and the local American Indian community. There's an evaluation tool for each event or activity that's presented. And a strategy is that Columbia Heights Public Schools provide American Indian family engagement programs like speakers, cultural workshops, field trips, or other activities and events.
And then this is just a little outline of this, where we get our money from. So you can see the state funding and there's federal funding, all for a total of about $48,676 a year.
And I'll just add, if I may, that when I first started working with the American Indian Parent Committee, maybe 6 years ago, the federal funding was perhaps $4,000 to $5,000. There's a very particular form that needs to be on file in order to secure that funding. And I just wanted to send a kudos to Valerie Larson because she connects with all of our families and helps people to get those forms, which can be kind of cumbersome, filled out in order for us to be able to provide additional support for American Indian students. So Laura or Val, if you have any other things, otherwise I'll stop sharing.
I just want to add, as a parent co-chair and a person that's been on the advisory for a little while. I'm really excited that this year we have a lot of parents participating, which has been great, and lots of folks that are really interested. And I think the program is continuing to grow. And then Val, correct me if I'm wrong, but aren't there going to be like 15 possibly American Indian grads this year?
I think we're down to 8. Some of the students have
Oh,
left the
some
district.
students
Moved.
Yeah,
went to
there
different
was gonna
schools.
be,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
Still,
Some of
8
the
is a
students-
big number for us, though.
It is really. So yeah, so expect eight American Indian graduates, which is all the students that we have that are American Indian in the 12th grade this year.
Great.
And I have confidence in every one of them.
Me too. Great, thank you. Questions from members of the board? Mary?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say, I have heard some, like, nothing but wonderful things about the activities and all of the work that you are doing. It's really paying off, and, you know, families and students really love that opportunity to be able to learn and to participate in those things. So thank you so much for your help with those things and for really making it be so welcoming and so warm of an environment for people to feel comfortable. I think that that growth definitely is coming from your leadership. So thank you both so much.
Thank you, Mary. Other
Thank
comments
you.
or questions? Brenna?
I just want to say congratulations on 100% graduation rate. That is off the charts. That's fantastic. And then I just was wondering, I know that the University of Minnesota has got tuition programs that are really geared towards that population, and I'm just wondering what we're doing to connect students with that, and if we've seen any success in that kind of placement.
All of the students, when they're in about 11th grade, 10th, 11th grade, I start getting them to write letters to institutions just to get things like information, information about maybe perhaps summer programs, or get flags, get, different resources from colleges around the state, and, from both tribal and other colleges, so that they learn how to write letters to present themselves in a good way, and are able to receive, something back from them. And that's been really helpful, I think, for them, because that's the start of getting in communication with a college. You're right, the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis here provides a whole year of free college tuition for any student, American Indian student, that wants to attend. As you're aware, up in Morris, Minnesota, the U of M Morris also has free tuition for the whole time that you're there, for like 4 years. Augsburg University also provides tuition free for American Indian students for the 4 years. And so, of course, I'm encouraging students to take advantage of that, particularly if they're looking for something beyond the 4 years, like if they're going into, a career that has, 8 or 10 years of college ahead of them. It's really good to be able to get some of it, free. So that's kind of I don't know if I answered your question or not, but that's kind of how we start. I start having them write letters, and then they continue to do that.
That's wonderful.
They also, some of the kids go on that college tour too, don't they, Val?
Yep.
I love that you're teaching them life skills and getting them into school, and you guys do such a fantastic job. This is always one of my favorite presentations, so thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you. Anything else from board members?
I love this program, and I love to see the growth. I mean, way back, there was a time when it was a collaboration, and it didn't feel like there was a whole lot, being done, for our students here. And obviously, if you really want to serve the students, you bring it home and put family in charge, and but that's how you get things done. So I love to see the initiatives this year. They seem very ambitious, but incredibly doable. And our graduation rate for this population has always been extraordinarily impressive, and I believe it will continue to be so. So thank you.
Thank you. I agree with what everybody said, and I think I want to take this time, Val, to say that we're very lucky as a district to have you in this position. I mean, this really is your leadership, and we very much appreciate that. And Laura, welcome to the chair role, and it's exciting for you to be in this leadership. I'm really excited for that as well. But it sounds like you two are going for it, so I appreciate it. But Val, kudos to you. I want to recognize all of the hard work that you've done for our district, and we appreciate you for that.
Well, thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
All right, thank you very much. We will move on to our secondary building vision cards with Executive Director Niembwe and Principals Burkus and Nguyen.
Good evening, Chair Mueller, members of the board, and Superintendent. Oh.
Is it? You have to share the screen.
2 years in, right? Like, it still happens for everybody. It's all good.
We'll do it without Brian. So used to logging on Zoom and projecting it. Well, we'll start over. Chair Mueller, members of the board, and Superintendent Stanwyk, good evening. I am here tonight with Principal Nguyen and Principal Burkus to give you a report on the building vision card for both secondary schools. Our vision in Columbia Heights Public Schools, creating worlds of opportunity for each and every learner. All belong, all succeed. In their presentation tonight, or our presentation tonight, all the core values will be represented. And we continue to be proud to say that the Columbia Heights Public Schools core values are aligned with the Board of Education Equity Statement. This is an information update, no governance questions. And this is just a reminder that our strategic roadmap guide the building vision cards. And we'll start with Principal Burkus.
Thank you, Director Niembwe. Chair Mueller, Superintendent Stanwyk, members of the board. I'm happy to be here tonight to talk about Columbia Academy. And just if I could, at the very start, it was so fun to hear about strong band programs and the long history that is there. I was in our band room today, marveling at what an amazing band instructor we have today. So that line, that through line is there. And I know all the way through the high school as well. I'm not going to talk about every line. I'm sure you're pleased to hear that. But I do have some that I'd like to pull out. I think one to note in this first page is that attendance. We do want to celebrate improvement in attendance. We still want to get into that vision of 91% or higher. We last year did have better attendance as students returned to school. We still had kids that would go out for a long time with COVID. It's kind of hard to bring our minds back to what it was like at this time last year, but a very different world still in our schools with masks and kids being out for long periods of time when they had COVID or have been exposed to COVID. So, but that attendance is something that we know is so extremely important, something that we are emphasizing again this year as well. I think just kind of moving through some highlights, the school climate, I think I would highlight do our students like being there? And I think the feedback that we get is yes, they do. Last year coming back was not easy after having been gone for a long time. And rebuilding community was challenging, but one thing we knew all of that time was that our kids were excited to be there. They loved coming and being together at school, and you could tell that. And so I do believe that that focus on building community was important for us, and it's something that continues this year as well. But even in that re-entry to school, when it was hard, we saw that commitment to being part of our school, to being there with your friends and with people that cared about you, leading your classes, and that showed in our student focus groups that we did. I think one of the things that I know is kind of a no-brainer, but we became very good at using technology. So our LMS systems, tomorrow we will have kids online, and we are just thinking about how challenging that would have been pre-COVID to do what we're going to do tomorrow. And it's really no big deal now. Our teachers, our students are so much more proficient at learning through technology. And so we are integrating still a strong amount of technology in the work that we do. It's not exclusive, but we are working on things with the Office of Teaching and Learning called the Modern Classroom Project, which is basically an evolution of the things that we've learned in that time away from school that we can apply still when we're in school. And it's very exciting for us to see. Just a quick mention on Khan Academy. I know it doesn't look great there, but we've got so many tools that we're using now that some of the tools that we named originally are no longer prominent or the dominant tools that we have. And that's the case with Khan Academy at this time. I think on this next page, I would really like to jump all the way down to the bottom and just talk about the importance of growth, academic growth, and really thank our district for allowing us to celebrate our growth with students from wherever they come to us. So not expecting that students will all start at the same place, they don't, but they will start and grow from wherever they are if we do a good job. So we do have the Fast Bridge that we use for that, and we have goals for that each year that we take very seriously. And so we did celebrate reaching those goals this year with FAST, and we hope that we can continue to see that grow. We're working very strong this year, particularly in the area of literacy, and continuing some of that work from last year. In communications, I think that if it's another year of doing something similar, but I think still hoping that that will be a solid way to communicate with parents, and that is through our email blasts and our from teachers, as well as my weekly updates to families. We do have a lot of parents that are on ParentView, but we find that it's not always used as much as we would hope. So I think trying to reach parents through multiple venues or multiple different ways seems to make the best sense at this time. So emails, phone calls, ParentView, the combination, things that we send home as well. In addition, I think we continue to work on making sure that we're communicating through family events. Last year, those numbers were still quite low, something that we're hoping this year that we can again get back to normal, having so many more things like band concerts where we can get the elementary bands and our band together in our gym, celebrating through music or our academics, and really have that full menu again this school year. Moving on to the next page, we have I think one of the reasons that we do work well as a team is that we have built a system that promotes that. So we do have common prep time for our teachers to get together. So we expect that of them, and they do a great job. I see our teams of teachers working. Very, very few teachers work alone because they value that opportunity to be together and work together. So it's a very team-oriented approach, and we're very much focused on grade level curriculum. So those are the things that we are doing in our school, and we did last year, I should say. Our goals are really tied to then that 50% or higher on the FAST for literacy, and we're working on that again this year, hoping that by a strong focus on literacy, we're doing the work of equity, we're doing the work of building worlds of opportunities for our kids, and so that continues to be our focus this year. With that, though, we do know that with all of this, teams of teachers, we need to have our expectations extremely high. Our challenges are high. And so that implementation of strong PLCs where we work together as teams is something that we would like to be at 100%, that we have all teams working at maximum efficiency. So I will stop there and hand it off to Principal Wynn.
Are there any questions for Principal Burkes before we move to Principal Wynn?
I just had a question about the mental health screener, and
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you guys are getting the services that you need, and if there's anything that we should be aware of.
Yeah. I think, I would say this, that the mental health concerns last year, speaking of last year, were very high, and we had lots of concerns about it. One of the things that is a result of that is work with the district in a social emotional program that we can use this year that includes a screener as part of it that we can use to help identify needs. So that's been a good addition to what we have available to our kids. I'm hoping that that will be another way for us to engage in conversations with kids that can address some of those social emotional needs that I think can be quite high in middle school as kids, try to figure things out. And so I think that our hope this year would be that in addition to that, we can also begin to use the social emotional assessment that is part of the FastBridge system as well. So there's a lot of need. And we know that, and I think it's hard sometimes. I know that just finding enough people out there in the world that can come and be part of our school to help kids is a challenge. But we do have good people that do work in it, and they work hard, and I think our teachers are trying very hard to help be aware and make connections with kids to help make sure that we're not kids aren't going unnoticed or needs are not going unnoticed. Yeah.
Other questions?
I just had a comment. I wanted to go back to Mr. Burkes when you talked about celebrating the growth and just acknowledge that, yes, we do see it and we're very impressed. I love it. And I'm glad that you always strive for better. But just a heartfelt thank you to the teachers and everyone down there that's doing the work, the support staff, leadership, to get those kids up and running and keep meeting their goals, because that's really what it is about. So thank you.
Thank you. I feel like we've got a great team down there. I would match them up with anybody in the state. And we've got great teachers, great staff working, and they work very hard.
It shows. Thank you.
Laura? Yeah, and as far as that, the FAST, we have like actionable data. We can get that in assessments faster with that one, or as far as, because I see that the growth is amazing, and it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
So is that the one where where you're able to do multiple
Yeah, we can do it,
assessments?
yeah, we can do it 3 times a year for screening, or just to basically set a baseline and then measure growth in the mid-year and end of year, and get those results almost immediately, so we
So
don't
it's
have to wait.
actionable data?
It's actionable data, yeah.
Okay.
And so we can,
Unlike the MCA, it's
Yeah.
not actionable, so,
Yeah.
okay.
yeah, this is data that we can then analyze and find out what are our students' strengths and weaknesses, and then address intervention to those areas which are the greatest needs. So it provides a wealth of data, so much data that sometimes it's hard to know even where to begin with it. But it's there for us to use within a few minutes, a few hours of the tests being done, so.
So are you using your data days for being able to analyze that particular stuff, or is that being worked in the PLC groups?
It's for both, yeah. We look at them in both areas. So again, this year we have our FAST data from the fall, and so we've been using that to identify students with our greatest needs, those who are kind of on the border, and then what are the areas of greatest need within those groups. And then it does identify, it has like 4 or 5, I guess, specific areas that they will identify as the dominant area to look at first in terms of need. And so we use that as part of our PLC work and part of our data days. It kind of drives most of our conversation. So Tuesday mornings, we're there all together as a team in our media center. We meet by PLC to talk about that data on a weekly basis. So, yeah.
How long is a test like this?
Well, we have 2 components. We have what we call the A reading, which includes comprehension, but it will basically test across decoding and all sorts of things. That takes about an hour. But then we do, in addition to that, we do a fluency test, and that's done individually, 1-to-1. That takes about another 5 minutes per student, but we have to do that individually when we do it that way.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
yep.
Great questions. Any other questions? Yep, Mary.
I just wanted to say, Principal Burkus, I really appreciate the communication that you send out. I appreciate that we can reliably expect on Saturdays, we're gonna get an email, and on Sunday at, what is it, 6 o'clock?
5:30.
5:30, we get a phone.
Why do you do that?
So
That sets me up.
A lot of people say
And
that.
so-
Why do I do that?
But I think the reason why I think that is so special and unique is because my husband checks his email more regularly, and I check voicemail, and so we're both getting the information in ways that works best for us, and I think that shows in ways that, you know, families just are getting this data different ways and getting that information, and it's really helpful to get it in 2 different ways. Coming from elementary school into the middle school, there's already a disconnect for parents. It's a lot harder. There's some individuation happening with kids, but the continuity of the communication that we get from you as the middle school principal is, I think, really helpful, and I hear that from a lot of families too. So I just wanted to call that out. It's really important, and it's very much appreciated by everybody. Although you are not saying "rise up" as much as you have,
Yes,
so
I-
we're noticing that. So, no, but
Yeah.
just a joke. But
Yeah.
honestly, it is much appreciated. So thank you for that.
Well, thanks. I know some people might dread the 5:30 phone call, so I appreciate it. But I do think too, we're hoping that our teachers can be part of this as well, with their the STAR teachers emailing home grades, and with just an emphasis again that we're trying to put on teachers communicating more too when there's that need, and being that one-to-one person that they can talk to. So, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, Principal Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Burkus. Good evening, Chair Mueller, Superintendent Stenvik, and members of the school board. And noted, Ms. Granlund, I have some big shoes to follow here. So I will improve on that as well. So looking back at last year for us, my first year in Columbia Heights was a heck of a year to come into a new building for probably anyone in the country, right? Coming off of COVID and all the TikTok challenges and all the great things that were very creative for some of the kids, but definitely a distraction. But overall, I felt blessed to be here, and it gave me good vision on where to go from there. But looking back at last year, looking at our mental health and wellness, really the staff, the highlight for us was, although we had lots of staff out due to illness, there were very few days where kids didn't have a teacher stepping in. And I want to give all credit to our staff, whether that were dean stepping in the classroom or teachers covering for one another. We did not have to rely and call other than twice to get support from central office. And so that's very cumbersome, and it's a lot to take on for a staff, but I was really proud of our staff for covering during their planning periods and their preps. So definitely a highlight on that. And because there were a lot of absences for our staff and students due to COVID. Our mental health screener was definitely, I want to call that out, was not used to its fullest, and just having some vision moving forward for this year, we've already screened using the FAST. There's a tool on the FAST bridge that we can use, and so we've already started to screen students this year with a goal of 100% of our kids being screened. And so we also have advisory going on this year to help with some of the SEL, but I know we're talking about last year, so something that definitely we need to set a higher goal for. School climate, students reporting satisfaction, progressing. I'd love it to be at the 90 percentile. That's the goal overall. I still would challenge any school in this country to have the least amount of major incidents that we had. High school is high schools, and there's major events that happen between kids all the time. And I'm so proud of our kids for creating a very safe environment for kids. And we have kids from all walks of life in our high school, and that's why it's so fun to be a principal there and to watch how they navigate and get along and create a positive culture. And truly, data shows, and I was there, this is not just made up stuff. They get along, and it felt safe in the high school as far as things like fights. And I'm so proud of our kids, and we talk about that all the time, how they use some strategies. The Change to Chill room was a great opportunity for our kids if they were stressed and they had a place to go. So just having some of the new initiatives and some thoughtfulness before I got there, I think that those types of things helped create a pretty darn positive culture and a safe environment. Academics, as far as, okay, you're hearing that same noise that I am.
It's the microphone. When you guys move the table.
Oh.
Does that make
You're hearing this too, right? It's not in my head. Okay, thank you, sorry. So when it talks about student academic achievement and career and college readiness, one of the tools that we have there is Naviance. And so our district purchases Naviance, and every child has an account. We had kids enrolled in this. This year we actually did trainings for teachers, and we're using that during advisory. So I know I'm talking about this year a little bit, but I think we can get higher. We were progressing as far as everyone was signed up, but I don't know that we use that to its fullest. And so I'm really excited about what we're doing this year and next year. When we come back to report, it's definitely going to be in the vision area. When it comes to the learning platforms, Mr. Burkus and I had dinner tonight, and he stole what I was going to say. So I can echo what Mr. Burkus said about, there were some positive things that came out of this situation, and part of it was the advancement of being able to use other management systems, such as Schoology and Moodle and things that are listed here. And tomorrow, I'm very confident that our kids will do what they need to do with full confidence. So The next slide is PLC's focused on academic achievement. And I'm very proud to say that our high school teachers moved into PLCs, genuine PLCs. When I got there, there was conversations, and it was some teachers were doing it and some teachers were not. And really, they understood the why, and they moved into being on board. Very proud of some departments that really took this lead and drove the bus. And when you start to find some successes in PLC work, then it becomes more organic versus something that you've heard about or read about. And more people were willing to lean in. And I believe that the more they do it, the more successes they'll find. And the thing about the PLC work is that although, yes, we have SAT and PSAT and ACTs and the MCAs and things like that, the formative assessment is what really matters to me. And so that is so that we can give kids immediate feedback, and so that we can not wait for a test score to come in, right, months later. This is boots on the ground, immediate feedback for kids, immediate feedback for teachers to change their instruction as needed, and that goes for our advanced students as well as our students that need intervention. And so we're continuing to lean in. These numbers are nowhere where we want them. But when it comes to college and career readiness, we've definitely made some adjustments, and I can't wait to share that next year. All right, we've already talked about the communications that Mr. Burkus just set in front of everyone. I was excited that I felt like I was getting information out. I know that when it came to timely information, that was definitely sent out. Our teachers do send communications out. And at high school, that's really who the parents are getting the communication from as far as what to expect for classes. We have some teachers that really are giving parents more information than they even want, and that's fine. That's a great thing because at least they are communicating. My goal was to send a communication out weekly, and there were some weeks where I missed that mark for sure. And so I'm still missing the mark, but clearly I'm not doing phone calls. So I'm gonna get on that bus right now, and that'll be my New Year's resolution. But our students using Student View, our students do a great job with that. We use that to come into games to show it's just that they're a student for some safety reasons, as well as when someone's walking in the halls, we can ask them about their attendance or their grades. We're using that in advisory for the students to use to show their advisors. Parents using Student View, there's a lot of parents enrolled in this to the level of them using it. We're still feeling that out because it's a little bit skewed data in that how many parents, some families have 2 to 4 parents, 1 to 4 parents, and per child, right? So you have blended families, you have single families, and they all could be enrolled in it, but I don't know how many are using that. And so that's something we need to look at to see if it's valued by our parents. And we also need to consider language supports that are wrapped around that as well. I think that's it on that bundle. And then finally, the high school is running. It's a fast-moving machine. There's an event 6 nights a week. There is always something going on. But outside of sporting events, we also have some of our academic events. We have academic lettering. We have FAFSA nights. We have college application night. We have National Honor Society induction nights and concerts and band concerts and choir concerts, plays, all the events that make high school so amazing. And so it's more of an informal piece as far as parents coming to events because their children participate. But there is definitely access for families along with the parent-teacher conferences and phone calls and everything else that comes with it. So hopefully our administrative team is seen as a group that can come in with open-door policies and that we're easy to approach and easy to access. And so I'm very proud of our team with that. And then as far as improving outcomes, variability, Our departments last year all had common planning time. It was the first time, I believe, that had happened in years, meaning each department had their common planning time for the whole department, with the exception of a couple select groups like electives and our EL team. But every other, most, or all the core academic cores had common planning time, and they did meet with PLCs. And then my budget, we hit the mark on that, and so it's important to be a steward of our taxpayers' dollars, and I felt that we did a great job with that as well. Our school goals were revolved around the PSAT, with 55% by the spring screening window, and then also our teams meeting or exceeding as measured by the strategy implementation guide was 50% by the end of the year. Our teams were meeting with PLCs. We hit that mark, and I don't have the percentage in front of us, but I know that we did not make the aggressive goal that was set last year. So we have to regroup and figure out what that means for us.
Any questions for Principal Brennan?
It's looking like the standardized testing is not super effective, which is okay, because we all know that it's not. And I know I'm hearing that colleges are not necessarily requiring SATs and things anymore. We had pretty solid walkout of the MCAs by our 11th graders. And I'm just wondering, outside of like FastBridge, which I know you're using in educational stuff, are there other ways that you can be updating us, whether it's graduation rates, whether it's college placements, whether it's, Avid different things that you guys are doing that can show that the kids are growing and engaged and getting ready for college as those standardized tests lose relevance?
Right. Yeah, it's a real relevant question. And part of how we're viewed by the state is how many our participation rate, right? And so when we're having a conversation, is that data relevant to us? And does that drive instruction when you don't get the results?
Right.
I understand that, but unfortunately, we are measured by that. And so when we're talking about hitting goals by state measured things, but back to your question, yes, like this year we're already at 1,100 college applications.
That's awesome.
Right? Yeah. And that didn't happen by chance. That was intentional, how we moved some of our classes away from ACT prep classes or SAT prep classes. We had some teachers with great vision and leadership, making that more of a college preparation class and college application class. And so last year at this point, there was like 330, this according to Mr. Prowitz, there was about 330 some applications. We're at 1,100 plus as of like last week. This Naviance, just having teachers understand how to write the letters on Naviance and be trained how to upload it has definitely helped support that as well. But that's a measure about college applications, right? And then we also have our graduation rate. Very proud of our graduation rates as that's real right now. We do have kids that fail classes, and so we've had to be thoughtful about how to do some independent studies for kids to like make up classes within our school versus having to go somewhere else to obtain those, and then sometimes the kids don't come back. And so I'm excited to, after semester, to share that out with the board about some of the things that we've put in place to do intervention and to, with intentionality, to push for college. We're also building pathways right now so that there's some career options outside of just the college route. But the goal is to have every child leave our high school being prepared to choose whatever they may want to choose. And then as far as, like, we talked about pushing academic high, right? We're doing articulation with the middle school in about 3 different areas, in Spanish, in our math, and in our Spanish, math, and
engineering.
Yep, and our STEM, to like have conversations about our math gaining high school credit right now in the middle school, and making sure that we're using like what would be called high school credit, which also has a push up. It changes kind of the game and course offerings for us. As far as intervention, the formative assessment that we're using is, the teachers get together that teach a common class, decide on what kids already need to know, and then what do they do if they don't know it, and what do they do if they already know it. And so this is really complicated in a classroom, whether you have 16 or 39 kids, to teach at different levels, but there's intentionalities around it. And so we're far from perfect, but we continue through PLC to work on that. And that's the part that matters to me, is that formative assessment to change your instruction to meet kids' needs. Like I said, we have a long ways to go, but this is real stuff that's happening every day with a changing school daily. I think we had 7 new students start today, 11th graders. So pretty exciting. Our school's growing, right? And so our school is gaining. I don't know for sure but I believe this is the largest this school's been in like 2 decades. And that is exciting for Columbia Heights, that people want to come here because they're not all residents here, right? So whether that's through safety that they want to come here, through our graduation rate, through the way our teachers work with kids, there's some magic there, and we're not perfect. So that's what I like about us. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
I would love for people to be able to hear the things that are not, the tests that don't actually mean anything. So I appreciate that. And then I just had one more question. You were talking about Student View being something that you have kids pull up on their phones when you're like checking with them. I appreciate that you're looking at like, is a kid keeping up? Are they messing around? Whatever. My question is an equity question of, if you've got kids that don't have like data on their phones, or that like if
they can use
the
their
phones
computers.
are not super accessible and you catch a kid in the hallway, like do you have ways that you are able to help them if that's not if they don't have that kind of money or whatever?
Sure. We run weekly reports on students. We look at their attendance at every grade level. We look at their grades. Our deans work really hard. Our grade level administrators work really hard to pull people in if they're failing 2 classes or more, or if they're failing a class, to talk to the students. I don't try to catch anybody in the halls because it's a high school. It's really busy. If you were to hopefully someday walk through with me in the middle of like class, I'm really proud of our school right now. The halls look empty because kids are re-engaged this year. But your question about access and equity, they have their Chromebooks they can look up. We can sit down together. When I say the phones, I'm talking usually about like games, going into a high school dance to make sure there are students. Or if I see the same kid in the hall about 7 times, I say, let's pull out your phone and look this up, or let's come to my office and chat. And so that's how we would function in that like capacity.
If a student at a game or whatever didn't have the capacity to pull up their stuff, is there another way that they can be?
There's student IDs. Yep. So they know they need one or the other. And even if they lose their student ID, we can make another one in our office. So kids know ahead of going to any event that they need their one way to show that they're a student. And we do that for our safety. And we're very strict about that.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
I would say it was really successful at homecoming. I don't want to give away the secret for what they did when kids did not have data available publicly, but Miss Shirk is a genius, and she did a great job with that at homecoming, so.
Yeah. I'm glad you felt it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Mary?
I have, and these are both general questions, because we've had the elementary principals come through as well. But I just want to think about the metrics for a second. We know that the formative assessments like FAST, Bridge are far more accessible. We're getting more information and it's actionable. However, all of our metrics are related to the summative, the SAT, the PSAT, the MCAs, and those things. Are those things that, like, is this a goal that makes sense anymore for us? Or is this something that we should look at changing?
I can address part of that, Board Member Granlund. When you're writing SMART goals, you need some hard data, right? Some summative data. And so I totally concur with what you're saying. That would be great. It's hard to capture that in like an overall high school and I don't want to speak for the middle school, but I mean, we have all these different cores, right? And literacy is key, but math is too. And so as we're talking about formative assessments and writing SMART goals, yeah, we could have those conversations, because I'm all for showing that, because technically a kid could show growth over a 1 year span and still not make a mark, right? And so some kids move at different paces, but to show that we're using 1.5 years growth each year and still not be at a proficient level is the kind of data that I want our public to see, because that's the proof that our teachers are working hard daily.
And Superintendent Stenvick has a comment to that as well.
Yeah, so with the strategic plan, of course, it spans over 5 years,
Yep.
right? And as the metrics were created years ago, inevitably in education, things change. And so we saw that this evening, for example, when, a few years back, it seemed appropriate to name the Khan Academy, for example. And since that time, there have been other things that have come that are more useful, more research-based tools. So yeah, the metrics kind of change, and as this current strategic plan expires and we go through the process of launching or building a new collaborative strategic plan, those are definitely the questions that we'll be talking about.
Awesome. And I appreciate that. And I knew that this was created a while ago, and it is older. And I do love how fast things can change sometimes, and we have access to better data. And we know that the MCAs and the SATs and the ACTs are not very equitable either a lot of the time. So,
Can I say one more?
and then go ahead.
Sorry, just to add on. And I did receive feedback from the board recently at a recent meeting around data, and have since spoken with our Director of Communications, Kristen Stunkel, and she'll be working in the next couple of weeks with Office of Teaching and Learning around the data that we internally see every single day, and what are the pieces that we're able to post on our website that would make more sense.
Fantastic. And then one other thing, just in same sort of vein, I know that we think about Parent View, and we're looking at that for access for communicating with families. But again, as we discussed when the principals were here discussing their vision cards, it's only available in English, and we have a lot of other languages. I don't want to say, because I don't want to get the number wrong, but it's
approximately 38.
I thought it was in the 30s. And so I also don't want to, I feel uncomfortable about having a goal on there where it's just not anywhere, it's not accessible to everybody. It doesn't feel fair to the principals who have to come and answer, why is this slow, when it's just not something that maybe is accessible for everybody. And I am incredibly glad that we're going to be talking about all of these things over the next year, so.
And I just want to touch base on the Parent View too. I think it's important to understand the transition. As much as I miss the communications from you, Mr. Burkus, I do.
We've established that.
I do think that you've done a lovely job, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank
and
you.
I think that just goes to speak
Same.
about high school students being a little more independent in their learning. And for example, a parent may ask for a screenshot of their parent or student view and avoid having to log in on their own. So, I mean, there's that, and then you might have students that are English learners that are doing the same. So I don't want that to be held against you at all. I think that the information is there, and I do appreciate everything that is going on at the high school.
Thank you,
So.
Board Member Lewis.
You're doing a good job, too, with your communications, Mr. Nguyen. I didn't mean to give you a complex.
Great.
It's a gradual release of communication.
As much as I am on the Principal Burkus Fan Club of Communication, I do, as a parent, feel adequately communicated with. Thank you. I appreciate your emails as well. Any other questions for Principal Burkus or Principal Nguyen? Thank you both for being here tonight. It was very valuable information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
And next we will move on to our new suspended deleted courses. Principal Nguyen, looks like you're here again for us. Director Tuckrell and Emily Gardner.
Principal Nguyen, it looks like, oh, it just stopped sharing. Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, Chair Mueller, members of the board, Superintendent Stenvick. I'm here with Principal Wynn, sitting up there by himself, but he has Emily Gartner, our teaching and learning coordinator, as well as myself tonight to talk about the new and suspended deleted courses. Our mission in Columbia Heights Public Schools of creating worlds of opportunity for each and every learner, all belong, all succeed, and following our core values of excellence and courage as we think about being innovative with some of our course offerings. And our core values in Columbia Heights are aligned with the Board of Education Equity Statement. We are here tonight with an informational item, and I will be back on December 13th seeking approval for the new suspended deleted courses. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Emily Gartner, and she's going to share a little about the elementary recommendation to approve the adoption of Wonders.
Good evening, Chair Mueller, Superintendent Stenbeck, and members of the board. So as Director Tuckrell mentioned, we are seeking approval for Wonders to be adopted in grade 2. We are currently piloting Wonders with our grade 2 teachers. Prior to this year, we had Wonders in kindergarten and first grade, and then Literacy by Design as our literacy curriculum for grades 2 through 5. Gap analysis really showed that we had a need for more phonics in grade 2, which was lacking in Literacy by Design, but was present in Wonders, which we were already familiar with from our work with it in grades K and 1. So we are piloting Wonders in grade 2 across the district. We presented Wonders to the World's Best Workforce team on November 17th, and we are now bringing forward the recommendation to adopt Wonders in grade 2. So throughout this pilot, we have been working with our grade 2 teachers, as well as our principals and instructional coaches in elementary, and we've received overwhelming positive feedback. So some of the feedback from those pilot teachers that we've received is that the materials are very engaging, that the student anthologies are great at getting grade level text in the hands of students, that they really feel that there's high quality whole group literature and an improved phonics scope and sequence, as well as the curriculum being well aligned to the science of reading and what we know about how students learn to read. So Wonders is for elementary. For Columbia Academy, we have no recommendations at this time to add or delete or suspend any courses. And so with that, I will pass it to Principal Wynn to share about our recommendations for Columbia Heights High School.
Thank you. One of the conversations that we're currently having is our AP offerings in science, and currently we want to add. And so what science has done is done a flip-flop of 1 year it's AP class, and the next year it's like with our AP biology, and then we would do a ARCC or a flip-flopping from college opportunity to our AP classes. And so one of the things that we wanted to add, though, is an AP environmental science. Would you like me to read all this to you, or like what would be best? It's pretty long. Okay. And so that's what we're seeking approval for. And then, Tara, is that the only one that we added? Oh, okay. And then the second course that we would like to add, and I know that we talked about this last year, was the second piece of our Intro to Teaching class. And this is the culturally responsive teaching class. Mr. Johnson is teaching this currently, the Intro to Teaching. So this is the second part of that. And so we have teamed with Century College for this, for one of our pathways. And our students have this opportunity to earn credit and to hopefully begin a career in teaching. And so we're hoping to pique their interest and bring them back to Columbia Heights. I know that we ran like a pilot of this, of the intro, and I don't know where the action was last year at this. I think we did approve it. Tara, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, the Intro to Education we did approve last year. We were fortunate to get a grant through the Minnesota Department of Education to support the Introduction to Education pathway. So with that grant, they are supporting us with paying for the teacher part of the salary. They're paying for the transportation for the field experiences, materials, textbooks, as well as the costs that we pay to Century College. So usually we try to get this 1 year ahead and get this to last year for this spring. But because we received the grant, we would like to recommend that we start this course this spring.
And to be clear, this is for all grade levels, so students just entering the teaching, the pathway of teaching potentially, or education. And so it is elementary, middle school, and high school opportunities.
And with
Thank
that,
you.
if there are any questions?
I
think
do have one.
Yeah, Laura.
Is that course going to be taught at Century College?
No, it's
It
here.
is here?
It is here, yes.
Are there going to be additional pathways to Century College to further that? Because we do have access to Century College for our students.
Yes.
I mean, it is far, you know, technically. I mean, we're one of the farthest flung, you know, districts from where it's located, but there's lots of great opportunities there for our kids.
Right. Director Thuckrell, do you want to take that?
Yes. We actually started the Intro to Education course when Century College was not offering it anymore. So that really was our driver in Columbia Heights to have it here. We are one of the few school districts that will be offering the second course. And then from there, Century College has an articulated pathway that students can use to continue their general classes at Century College after graduation, or they could go on to a four-year college in terms of getting their license using these classes. So we have a great partnership with Century with that.
One of the things, though, that we're being very cautious with is that when we have these partnerships with colleges, does that mean that they have to continue that route into that college? And so we're being thoughtful in our relationships with them. For some of them, it transfers across the different colleges within the University of Minnesota system. And for others, it would transfer in as an academic elective, like an elective that kids could use towards graduating from college, but maybe not with that. It's an academic elective credit. So we are being thoughtful in those partnerships.
I just have kind of like a side comment here. Have we considered anything for training for educational assistants since there's such a huge shortage?
Yeah, so we are.
It's a wide open field.
Yeah.
And if we're already starting in education, I wonder how much more we could maybe support.
We work with Metro XU on things like the Parapro and support for educational assistance. And so sometimes we've been able to hire like a building monitor and then work with them to support them through being able to pass the Parapro exam so they can become educational assistants. So absolutely.
Okay, okay, that's good. Yeah, because I'm extremely concerned about that. As many times as I've brought it up, I think I've made that pretty obvious. So,
Thank you. Other questions?
I just have one question about enrollment for the teacher courses. Approximately how many did you have enroll in that class for like this fall, or was there?
You know, I went to speak with them, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. Tara, do you have the number in front of you? I think we're at 20, was it 24, 26 students?
Between 25 and 30.
Okay.
Because I was placing them for their field experience, which is starting next week.
Right. So I got to go in and be a guest speaker, and there was a lot of kids in there, and they were asking great questions and a lot of follow-up questions. Mr. Johnson's doing a great job.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Brenna?
I'm wondering about the Wonders curriculum. When we're, I know like at North Park they're doing STEM stuff. Is there science? Is there STEM stuff within that curriculum that works with that vision?
Yes, great question. And Emily, jump in on this one too. We actually were over there today with Principal Sosik and talking about our next steps in terms of integrating our literacy curriculum, math, and all the pieces into STEM, into Project Lead the Way. So there are pieces within Wonders, and then we also will support with the Project Lead the Way materials and supplementing as needed.
Great, thank you.
Laura?
I actually just have a follow-up question on the introduction to teaching, or introduction to education, or introduction to teaching. Which one is
So
that?
we have two. The one that we brought to you tonight is about
Yes,
our culturally responsive teaching. Correct.
Yes. As far as the demographics, are they representative of the student body?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, that's good.
Our last year's group was actually more diverse than our student body.
That's even better.
So we'll analyze this year's, but last year we were above that, which is part of what Century College and our grant is pushing.
And I would say that by gender as well. It looks a lot like what our school looks like.
Fantastic.
Excellent questions. Thanks, everybody. Any other questions? All right. Looks like Principal Wynn, you're done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody else.
Next, we have Director Hennekins and Matt Mayer from Bergen KDV to present the audit.
Give me a second to pull the presentation.
Get the wobbly microphone over there,
I'll
the
watch
wobbly
for
table
that.
on those.
Been forewarned.
Don't bump the table.
Second, I'll choose. These controls so you can see what you're doing. Okay. Thanks. Thank you, Chair Mueller, members of the board, and Superintendent Stenbeck. This evening, as introduced, I have Matt Mayer from Bergen KDV, our independent auditor, he will be going through a full presentation of our FY, or fiscal year 22 audit. And so I'm just going to turn it right over to him and let him go through all of the audit. And take it away, Matt.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Chair Mueller, members of the board, superintendent, thanks for the invitation to present this evening. You received 3 documents in preliminary format in your materials, which represent the final product of the audit. I'm going to summarize all of those in the PowerPoint presentation here, and we'll be able to, I think, cover all 3 of them in a very summary format here and give you the high-level information. Having trouble paging through, Brian.
There
we go. Just be a little more firm, use the right button. It's the district's responsibility each year to prepare financial statements for the public to show your financial position and your results of operations. That falls on the responsibility of Brian and his team in the finance department. They put the books together, and our job as your auditor is to come in to test, examine, give an opinion on those so that users of them can be assured they are a true and accurate picture of the district's financial position and results of operations. We do that through something called an independent auditor's report, which is inserted on our firm's letterhead in front of your annual comprehensive financial report. And that this year we provided an unmodified or clean opinion, which is the best that we can provide. It means that the numbers that we'll be looking at in a little bit do accurately represent your financial position at the end of the 2022 school year. Also, we issued 3 other reports. One of those is a report on government auditing standards, and that has to do with internal control. Internal control are your policies, your procedures. It's the way you do business here as an organization to ensure that you get accurate numbers at the end of each year, and also to safeguard your assets to make sure that they're only used for the purposes that they're intended. If we have any concerns regarding internal control, we'll bring them to your attention. And we do have what I call our one perennial finding related to lack of segregation of accounting duties. In a smaller office environment, we don't get all of the touches or checks and balances that we would like to get. In a perfect or ideal environment, we're basically looking for 4 different touches on everything that happens, from payroll to vendor payments to cash receipting and the like. And right now, we're probably getting 2 to 3, and we'd like to ultimately get there. I know you've had a little transition the last couple of years, so some new faces in there, and I think as folks get settled into their roles or reestablish responsibilities, I think there's an opportunity to bring the severity of that comment down and perhaps eliminate it completely in future years. There was a significant amount of federal money coming into the district during the 22 fiscal year, and as a result of that, the feds want to make sure you're using those dollars appropriately, and we are required to perform what's called a uniform guidance report or a single audit on those. It's not so much a financial audit as it is a compliance audit. We're really looking at how you utilize the funds, whether you followed the guidelines that the grant agreement indicated. And this year we tested 4 different programs across the district, and happy to report no findings on any of those. And then the final report I'm offering you this evening is one on Minnesota legal compliance. That has to do with the statutes that apply to school districts here in Minnesota, how you do your contracting and bidding, if there's any conflicts of interest with individuals associated with the district, how you're depositing and investing your funds. And again, no findings or issues there. So I think an excellent report as far as the audit results go. 3 of my reports are unmodified, and the one finding that we had is one that you've seen before. I don't want to minimize that, but I do think that the district is conscious of it, is making the best cost-benefit decisions associated with that. And again, as the finance department transition continues and solidifies itself, I think there are opportunities to address that tangibly going forward. With my remaining time tonight, I would like to look at the numbers with you and give you some perspective. From our point of view, I know you get updates throughout the year from the finance team, but sometimes it's good to get the perspective of somebody coming from the outside. And I want to do that mostly around the general fund. The general fund is the main operating fund of the district, and it really is the one that drives your main operations here. As school board members, you have a governance responsibility, a governance role to basically monitor and be fiduciary, have fiduciary responsibility for the district's finances, and your main tool to honor that goal and direct the activity is through the budget process. At the end of each year, you put a budget together for the following year, and that is really the wishes of you as the board, the governing body, and how you want the district to be run financially. It's administration's responsibility then to execute that budget, report on the execution of that budget, and report back any variances along the way to you. So at the end of the year, I think determining whether it was a successful year or not for the district financially should be done in the context of that budget. So to remind you, your budget, your final amended budget for the 2022 fiscal year called for $53.8 million in revenue, about $53.5 million in spending, and then the plan was for your fund balance to increase by about $495,000 for the year. If we look at the actual results for the year, revenue actually came in better than anticipated, about $55.4 million. It's about $1.6 million better than anticipated. Almost all of your revenue projections were right on, from local revenue to the levy, but the one variance there had to do with the federal funds, and that's because a lot of these federal funds were coming in kind of after the budget process was already through. Also, some discretionary decisions were made throughout the year as to how and when to use some of these dollars. And as a result of those choices, we ultimately utilized more federal dollars than were anticipated in the final amended budget, to the tune of about $1.6 million. On the spending side, expenditures actually came in at $56 million, and that was about $2.5 million over budget. 1.6 of that is directly related to those federal funds. So they wash each other out, and they don't have an impact on your financial health or the bottom line in any way. So those two are kind of resolving themselves. So if you do the math on that, that results in about another $900,000 of overages on the expenditure side of things. And as we delved into that, it was very clear to us that it had to do with pupil support services, which is mostly transportation related. And as we had discussions with the finance team, we found out some of the challenges that were out there regarding special education transportation, not only finding adequate vendors and capacity out there, but ultimately as a result of having those challenges, going from the large yellow school buses to some smaller vans to more individualized transportation, and the cost associated with that ultimately exceeded the budgeted amounts that you had during the year, and the vast majority of that remaining $900,000 variance was in the transportation category, and something to be conscious of and something to monitor perhaps moving forward. I understand there have been significant improvements in those contracted services in this new fiscal year. So ultimately, the fund balance declined for the year rather than increased by about the same amount as the planned increase. It was about $500,000, and you ended the year with a fund balance overall of about $2.6 million, and we'll revisit that number a little later in the presentation. I want to step back and give you kind of a macro look at school finance, and then we're going to dive back in on the details for you. This provides a perspective on the general education aid formula from the state of Minnesota. This is your main funding mechanism in the general fund, as we're going to see, is the state revenue, and the general education aid, which is paid on a per pupil basis, is your main funding source within that general fund and within that state category. Now you can see regular increases here, but very modest increases each year as well, going from 1% to 2%. The high point was the year under audit at 2.5%. If you've been watching the news recently, the challenges with inflation, inflationary increases, they far are exceeding the amounts that we're seeing here, and that ultimately is going to pose challenges both to you and administration on how to best utilize those funds, execute on your mission, and also maintain your financial health. So there are some headwinds that you're facing when it comes to that. The year that we're currently in, you are getting about a 2% increase over and above the 2022 numbers. Now, from there, we take a look at your pupil counts, because that's going to be driven, going to drive the actual revenue that you get on a per pupil basis. We look at it a couple different ways. One of those is, first of all, your resident average daily membership. These are the public school students that live within Columbia Heights boundaries, whether they attend here or not. So you can see that's actually been on the decline, unfortunately. Demographically, your community is starting losing students of school age, and actually from 2021 to 2022, it was about a 2.5% decline, and if you look over the 5 years, it was about a 7.7% decline. So that is going to pose some challenges, but again, this is specifically your residents. That's not ultimately the number you're paid on. We need to factor into account the effects of open enrollment. And we have a very mobile population. We've got a lot of residents leaving the district, but we also have a lot of non-residents coming in. And if you take a look at that, we're looking at about 1,250 pupil units coming into the district from outside and losing about 1,600 through the open enrollment process. So in the end, the number on which you're paid is this 3,689 pupil unit number, which is weighted for the secondary students. You get a 20% bonus on those on the on the state funding mechanism. And this number also is kind of gone up and down a little bit overall on the decline over the 5-year period. We're looking at a 1% increase over 2021, which was good news, but over the 5 years, about a 2.6% decline. So we're not seeing tremendous growth. We are seeing somewhat of a decline overall, and that's ultimately going to impact the revenue stream that you get in the general fund. If you take a look with me at your revenue from 2022 compared to 2021, on the surface it seems like a good number. It looks like about an 8.5% increase. We went from 51 million to almost 55.5 million. But if you look at the two main revenue sources that are constant for you, state revenue being one of them, that number is very flat. And that is because of that flat enrollment and slightly declining enrollment, and also the fact that we're talking about 2%, 2.5% increases. If you look at your 2022 number of 40,342,000, it's not that dissimilar to your 2019 number 4 years ago at just a little over $40 million. And in fact, it is significantly lower by about 700,000 than what you got from the state back in 2020. So the funding on the general revenue side and the state category anyway has been relatively flat. I just wanted to explain, long way to get there, but talking about a couple of things, per pupil funding, and then also the enrollment and the students that you're serving ultimately. Another number that's very flat there is the local property tax, and that number has been relatively static. You're going to typically get between 6.5 million. There's going to be ups and downs from year to year, because the state pays you through the levy process on some estimates related to your needs, on your pupil counts, on your lease activity, and they're going to take back or adjust those from year to year. So we might have several $100,000 swings, but typically that levy is going to be between 6.5 million, and we're not seeing a lot of movement there. That is one of the categories where you fall a little bit below statewide averages, and the one variable there is the voter-approved operating referendum. We had a good discussion this morning regarding that with the administration. Right now, you're at about $300 per student. There are districts across the state, in fact, the statewide average is somewhere in that $1,500 to $1,600 range, and you can see that's going to also pose some challenges from a funding standpoint for the district as well. The one category that's higher is that other revenue, and that was the federal revenue being utilized. And that was a great safety net for the 2022 fiscal year, but this is typically, and most of it was one-time COVID-related type funding, whether it be the ESSER, the GEAR, ARP money, whatever the case may be. We're not going to be able to rely on that as a constant revenue stream going forward, so it was a nice stopgap for 2022, but that would be a number that I would see falling back to that $3 million to $4 million number in future years. So that gives you some perspective on where general revenue is and kind of what the trends are. And I think this chart, as I was preparing today, really does a good job of showing that. If you cut off that blue top of the bar, which is that other revenue, that federal revenue, you can see that the levy and the state aid have not moved significantly over that 5-year period. That funding is relatively flat during that time. I want to give you some perspective on how things landed then for you financially. And this chart is very busy, but let's concentrate on the right-hand column there. And that is showing the numbers that I shared with you earlier of about a $500,000 decline in overall fund balance, taking you from a $3 million fund balance at the beginning of the year to a $2.5 million fund balance at year end. And the $2.5 million that you're seeing there, $2,569,000, the bottom line in green on the top portion of the chart, translates down to the bottom there as well. And we're taking that $2.5 million and disaggregating it into its various components. Some of that fund balance is restricted. It comes from the state of Minnesota, and they tell you what to do with it, so you don't have a choice but to spend the $424,000 of it on operating capital, or $227,000 of it on scholarships or staff development. And as a result of that, after we take all those set-asides, what remains is the unassigned fund balance, and that number is at $1,455,000 to end the 2022 fiscal year. That is your discretionary fund balance. That's the number that you utilize to evaluate your financial health in the context of your fund balance policy. And if we do the math on that number, based on the statewide averages, your fund balance to end the 2022 fiscal year is going to land right around that 4.2% mark. And that is based on the statewide uniform calculation for evaluating a district's financial health. You have a little bit different metric internally here on how you calculate that. Your goal, to remind you, is to have sort of a number between 8 and 12%. And you take a little bit different approach. 6 and 12?
Yep.
All right, thank you. 6 and 12%. Use a little different approach that ultimately drives a little bit higher number, maybe a 0.5% higher than that, but this is going to give you some pretty good perspective on where that number is going to land, and this is a uniform approach that allows you to compare yourself to other districts across the state. Now, as we were reviewing the numbers this morning, we did notice that in my presentation last year, I believe the 2021 number had a clerical error that had just copied the 2020 number over. So I think if you look last year's numbers, it had 8.2 for 2 years running, when in fact the 2020 number was about 5.5%. So you can see that that decline has been over the last couple of years, and again, we're landing at about 4.2%. For the 2022 fiscal year. Would encourage you to look at that in the context of your fund balance policy. Take a look at the macro environment, as I talked about earlier, on the revenue side, and then make some decisions policy-wise on how you want to approach that. A lot of things on your plate, weighing the revenue stream, weighing your program needs, the needs of the students, obviously, and also maintaining that financial health overall in the context of that 6 to 12% policy that you have for yourselves. I'm going to move to wrap things up here to 2 of your other operating funds. We isolate all of the food service activity out into its own special fund, and the federal government, again, was very generous this year when it came to food service. They elevated the reimbursement rate significantly, which allowed for all students to eat free for the 2022 fiscal year. That reimbursement rate was more than enough to cover the cost of that services, and a lot of that surplus fell to the bottom line. Grew the fund balance to about a $1.4 million fund balance in the food service fund. It typically takes about a little less than $2 million a year to run your food service fund, so a very healthy fund balance by having almost a half of year in spending available for you, and that sets that fund up well for the future. So should not have any concerns about food service fund activity for several years going forward. And then the final fund I want to take a look at tonight is the Community Service Fund. That is a conglomeration of a lot of different activities, your community education activity, your early childhood family education, school readiness all go into that. So when we look at this fund balance, we can look at it in whole, and it is positive at $139,000. But more importantly, if you look at each individual line item within that particular fund, be it ECFE, be it school readiness, be it your community education programs, they're all positive as well. And that's a good sign. That means that the revenue stream coming in for those programs is sufficient to cover the cost of them and have a little bit of a rainy day fund at the end of each year for each of those individual programs as well. So I think I'll leave it at that. If there are questions, I'd be happy to stay for as long as you have them. You'll have the opportunity to review these materials over the next couple of weeks, and I'll join you again in December remotely as you accept the report for submission to the state. So.
Great. Questions?
Can I just quickly say that the reports that Matt referred to at the beginning of the presentation, we didn't get them into the packet, and you will get them. I think everybody was kind of tomorrow. Everybody's kind of looking at each other a little bit of like, what ones? So I just wanted to put that out there right away.
Great. Thank you. Other questions?
Can we get,
Mary, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, can we get this presentation loaded into board book? Is it what? So that we can see it later too? Thank you.
Brenna?
So Director Hennekins, did we budget based on that 8.2% versus the 5.5? Like, what did that do for us?
You're talking about the assumed 8.2% fund balance that was reported for the audit for 21, right? I think that, I would answer that in the sense that the 8.2% that was reported is the numbers behind that didn't create that 8.2%. So, I would say from the standpoint of what the numbers actually ended at versus what the percent was provided, it wasn't like there was the calculation on the backside and all the numbers were wrong, and then the percentage was then reported as the numbers were. It was misreported there. So I would say that for sure. As far as what our assumed fund balance was going into the year, when we were having conversations about staffing planning for the next year, we did assume that we were at that 8.2% as reported, and felt a little bit more comfortable with the things that we were doing and the decisions that we were making based on that. And then also knowing that our focus on the programming, the academic acceleration, the things that we felt like were necessary or the organization was working on from a goals perspective to meet the kids' needs moving forward. And I think you saw that from the large increase in federal funding expenditures. We did predict a fund balance increase, and you heard what happened. So, had we not seen no yellow buses on the road for special education and all vans, had we not seen increased students receiving special education resources and those contracted services that went along with that at a rate higher than what we anticipated, we should have still seen that fund balance increase, which would have put us, even knowing that the 8.2% was, as presented, was wrong, back into the fund balance policy. But that we know the reality that happened, and the reality is that we were at 5.5% in fiscal year 21, and we're at 4.2%, and we have a lot of work to do to change that reality moving forward.
So if we were making decisions based on a typo, what restorative stuff is our auditor going to do about that, and how are we going to fix that going forward?
Let me make sure I understand the question.
So, when this was brought to us, we pay an auditor to look at our things and tell us where things are at, and then we make decisions based on trusting those numbers. Those numbers are inaccurate. So how is that going to get fixed?
Let me address that. I want to be careful about that language. The fund balance is presented in dollars, so I can give you that perspective here. And I can understand where you're coming from when it comes to that. The fund balance to end the 2021 fiscal year was $3 million, and that is the number, and it was accurate. And that was the audited number that you received. As a service to you, to provide some perspective on that, we provide these additional financial analysis, and that is where the clerical error occurred. So to say that the financial statements were inaccurate is not correct. The fund balance was $3,064,000. It was a calculation of this. And I could say, like you said, is that your approach to, how are you approaching your next budget cycle? I would emphasize the $3,064,000 fund balance as your starting point for that, and the $1,947,000 number, which was the base that you had there. So my recommendation, and I'll share this with Brian going into the meeting today, is that that fund balance be a more prominent internal metric for you, and that your monthly or quarterly, however often you receive financial data from your administrative team, have that presented to you so you see that on a regular basis, and that the once-a-year presentation for me and our firm is not the only mechanism for you to see that. I take full responsibility for that clerical presentation in this particular graph last year, but I want to provide the assurance that these numbers were what they were. The $3,064,000, the $1,947,000 was an accurate number for you to make your decisions on going forward. So.
Other questions or comments?
And I'd just add a comment quick that we've already started working on ways to do just that, and ensure that along the way that we see the actuals in a way that can make sure that we find the pieces that are popping up as the year moves on. So we're definitely working on that, and looking under the rocks as far as contracted services, the places that we know we're vulnerable, and looking at our student population, more specifically our special ed student population, and the services being served, or the needs of those students there, and how many students there are, because that student increase number in special education receiving services last year versus fiscal year 21 was just over 60 students additional. And then factor that in with the special education or transportation and not having yellow buses and running vans instead. That really is the story of financially what the situation is.
So I just want to be clear on a couple things. First of all, none of the funds were like misspent or lost or anything. And then also, every one of those dollars was spent on students. And so it's hard to say, but as a board, we might have looked at this and approved some of those things regardless, right? Like 2020, 2021 were challenging years. And I think that given all of this, I would hate to see what our district would have looked like during COVID without some of these things that we did end up doing. When you talk about some of the extra student support stuff that we had and the mental health services and all of that extra. And so although I'm frustrated, disappointed, I think we all are, I don't know that it was maybe the worst thing ever, because our students, we did see a lot of success compared to surrounding districts. We heard that. Our students were still engaged in learning and coming back to school sooner, I think, than a lot of other districts. So just for what it's worth for the admin, like, you have my support in this. I understand moving forward that things maybe need to be done differently in terms of how we look at that, but I still appreciate that, our students' needs were being met.
Laura?
Yeah, I think I would just follow. I mean, because we knew what the fund balance was going to look like. We just just didn't have the right percentage. But we knew we were going to be spending it down because we thought that was important. Granted, it felt a whole lot better for us to still be within the policy, but I agree with Molly here. We still would have done what we needed to do. The money is there. There's no point in it all in sitting in the bank, and with inflation right now, we probably got better use out of those dollars anyway. So
Mary?
I guess I'm just going to say, you did great with the kids. That's what the money is there for. I would prefer we're only getting $300 and some dollars versus $1,500 that other districts are getting, but well, look at how good of a job that you've managed to make it work.
Mary?
So,
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
go ahead.
I think my only question, I have sort of a statement and a question maybe in there. Mr. Mayor, school finance is a hot button issue across the state and really across the nation. And it was there was an error, a clerical error. I think my concern is how are we going to move forward with establishing trust again and with the community through your auditing? Because that, even though, again, I agree with everybody else, we would have spent those dollars. I don't know that we would have done anything different. I'm very proud of the work that we did. However, I want to be really thoughtful about the lapse in trust that this has, the potential of giving our community in your services and auditing too, as well as, people are already questioning what we're doing. So do you have you thought about that at all, or any idea on how to address that?
Yeah, let me do my best to address that. I think we've had about a 20-year history with the district. We have I presented to the board, and our goal, again, is to provide you that assurance that the numbers are accurate, okay? And I want to make a distinction again, and I apologize ahead of time if I'm pressing this too hard, but the numbers that we are giving an opinion on are the numbers that I'm showing you right here, okay? This is the dollars and the cents. This is the numbers that our team spent 300 hours auditing on site, your team's work, and these numbers are accurate. I stand by these numbers, and that is my job for you, to provide you the assurance on these numbers to the dollar, okay? As a service to you, to make this more user-friendly and to provide some perspective to the community as a whole, to give you some perspective on these numbers, we take the audited numbers, which are our official responsibility, and provide some more user-friendly charts, this being one of them. The other ones I shared with you earlier are the student count numbers and the like. One of those charts, when it got rolled forward last year, as I said, it was 8.2 in 2020. The person responsible for crafting the chart ahead of last year had an 8.2 there again. They carried over that number, and it wasn't caught during the proofing process. It was a clerical issue there. I hope that one crafting of that one chart does not diminish the work that is done on the actual numbers. It was a good faith effort to provide you a more user-friendly approach and should take nothing away from the work and the numbers that were there. I'm not giving an opinion on this particular chart. I'm giving an opinion on the $55 million of revenue and expenditures that the district made, not only in 2021, but 2022, and also for the last 15 years. So I hope that provides you some assurance and some perspective on what we're dealing with here tonight.
Thank you for that. Just to clarify, I know where you're coming from, and I appreciate that. I think right now with school boards, especially being underneath extra strong microscopes right now. And, as we're talking about all the different ways that we need to move forward with finances, I think it's really important for us to just have a transparent conversation about that. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Laura?
Well, I was going to say, I remember last year, I remember being, because I thought that our fund balance was going to be a lot lower. So when it came in higher, it was like, oh, wow, amazing. Because I knew we were spending it down. We had planned on spending it down. So, yeah, I guess I should have questioned that more at the time. I just said, well, how did we manage to keep a strong, healthy fund balance? But we had those extra federal dollars coming in, and I thought that had something to do with it.
I agree.
So,
Yeah, I think where that leaves us now at this point is, obviously, we have the audit that we have to, accept at our next meeting. And I think we all knew that we would be coming into some very challenging conversations over the next 12 months about what this looks like. And I think I agree with what Molly and Laura had said, that ultimately we need to do what's best for the students and faculty and staff in our community. And we've shown growth. We've shown some rebound from some challenging times. We have been sought after as a district of who's done it right. And we will continue to do that, along with having to make some challenging decisions on where the money's going. And what we have to remember as a board is we have to pay attention to that fund balance. I mean, we're about to have some very next conversation about cash flow. So that's, something that we need to keep in mind, as well as making sure we're not into statutory operating here coming, in the near future. So just continued conversations about the financial. And I think, Mary, that's where the transparency matters, is we need to have very real conversations at this table and with our community on where things are at and what we can and cannot do with a $300 per student operating levy. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Hennekins, you are up next for our cash flow borrowing. Oh, I am so
skipped
sorry.
one.
I skipped. That's interesting. Our next conversation, we have Director Nimbwe, Executive Director Nimbwe, and Director Hennekins for our school resource officer contract. Thank you.
I have to carefully look at your last name, Chair Mueller, before I was so used to Chair Severson. So good evening, Chair Mueller, Superintendent Stanvik, and members of the board. 2 weeks ago, Director Henneken and I presented on the school resource officer, and we had a great conversation about some action steps that we need to take forward. So tonight we are here requesting the approval of the school resource officer contract for the 2023 school year.
Great, thank you. So we will ask for a motion in a second, and then we will have discussion. Can I get a motion to approve the school resource officer contract for 2023?
so moved.
Laura? And a second by Molly. Any discussion? Laura?
Just real quick, we are continuing to have conversations about different accommodations with the collaboration with the police department. So I think that this has been a work in progress, and I appreciate all the effort that everybody put into this contract.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Mary?
I think, before we got the update on the fund balance situation, I was already concerned about the amount, and I had an opportunity to sit down with Director Hennekins and Superintendent Stenvik last week to talk about the increase across the board that 11.8% increase includes a lot of different things. It's not just, you know, entirely in the hourly or the 9/12% that, or number that we have. I do think it is really especially hard now, looking at that, that increase. And, you know, just, I appreciate the accommodations that the police department is willing to work with us on. I still think that we have to continue to have these conversations, as Vice Chair Palmer said. I want to continue to have conversations. I want to continue to look at other ways that we can support our students and our staff and safety in our schools, while being really cognizant of how much this increase is, and continuing to work with the police department to see other areas that they can accommodate. Director Henniken's, you know, last week when we met, you know, and I had that conversation with you, I said, we are making accommodations all the time, and, you know, Superintendent Stenvik's not taking, you know, an increase, and our staff aren't taking increases, and I said, where is this? And you were kind enough to point out, well, actually, they are not giving us their contracted rate of overtime. We are getting a lesser one. So I do appreciate that we're having those conversations, and I think we can continue to have those conversations, especially as we continue to move forward with the equity lens. So I think there's no question in there. Just thank you for being available last week and for going over that and then providing that information to the rest of the board today too. So.
Thank you, Mary. Any other discussion? Brenna.
This is just a really hard decision, and it's been really, I think, discouraging for me anyway, to just see our inability to negotiate this contract differently, our inability to negotiate differences on arrests for students, differences on costs, differences on oversight for our police, where we would have more say in that. There just has not been really the ability to budge, and so I just want to express that, because I would much rather fix the concern issues than vote yes or no, but it seems like that's our choice tonight, and that's unfortunate, I feel like. And it's been unfortunate to hear things like, if we don't contract, maybe they won't do basketball. If we don't contract, maybe they won't show up in the 3-minute time. Like, some of the things that have come back in these negotiations have been incredibly discouraging, and I'm sad that that's where we're at tonight. So I guess I don't have a question, but that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of the school resource officer contract, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we'll move on to the cash flow borrowing. Director Hennikens.
Thank you, Chair Mueller, members of the board, and Superintendent Stenvik. So this evening, if you recall, presented at a previous school board meeting, we talked in detail about the need for cash on hand, aid anticipation certificates, so borrowing. We, as school districts, get metered payments throughout the year, and with low cash balance that we know we have, at certain times of the year when larger bills come, we don't have enough cash on hand to make payments as we wait for aid to come to the state. So the avenue for us is to sell aid anticipation certificates, and before you is a resolution, and we're asking for approval for selling of aid anticipation certificates for the value of $2.8 million for cash flow purposes.
Great, thank you, Director Hennikens. There is a long resolution that we have received legal counsel opinion that I do not have to read all 22 pages of that resolution. We have a modified version of that resolution. The full resolution is available in Board Book, should anybody wish to read the entire thing. But I have one here that I will read and then ask for a motion and a second to move that forward. This is a resolution relating to $2,800,000 general obligation aid anticipation certificates of indebtedness, Series 2023A, authorizing the issuance, establishing the terms thereof, and authorizing the Director of Finance and Operations and Superintendent to award the sale thereof and to take such action and execute all documents necessary to accomplish said aid award and sale. I need a motion to move that forward.
So moved.
Mary, in a second? Second by Brenna. Any discussion?
So seeing the difference in the audit, is this going to be enough?
Yeah, this is based off of existing cash on hand. We work with a outside or an organization, PMA Network, to project out cash flow for the school year, and the latest projection that we received based on current cash on hand. This will cover our debt payments that are coming due in January, and what creates our cash flow problem.
Laura?
And that is in anticipation of our normal aid that's coming from the
Correct.
state or the federal government?
The state.
The state.
The state and
when do
levy.
we expect those payments?
They're meter payments throughout the year. So we receive meter payments twice a month throughout the school year. And so it's just a matter of getting to the
It's a
end.
couple of weeks, isn't it? You know, that we kind of need just to have that money on hand.
Yeah. So, and these are from January through September, and we'll pay them back. So, because it's just for covering cash flow needs through the winter and spring.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Mary, will you call the roll call vote, please?
I will. Lewis.
Aye.
Zimet.
Aye.
Granlund, aye. Palmer.
Aye.
Mueller.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Resolution passes. Next, we have the resolution to combine precinct for special elections, and we have Director Bennett.
Chair Mueller, members of the board, Superintendent Stenbeck, presented at the November 9th school board meeting was information on combining precincts in case we have to have a special election. And this year we will be needing a special election, so for sure we want to combine the precincts since it is a cost savings for the district. I did check with Don Hoyam, and we have to have the resolution passed by December 31st and filed. So tonight I'm here seeking of approval to combine the polling places down to 2.
Thank you, Director Bennett. I will read the resolution and then ask for a motion in a second. This is a resolution establishing combined polling places for multiple precincts and designating hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for school district elections not held on the day of statewide, county, or municipal election. Be it resolved by School District Independent Number 13, State of Minnesota as follows. Pursuant to Minnesota statutes, section 205A.11, the precincts and polling places for school district elections are those precincts or parts of precincts located within boundaries of school district which have been established by the cities or towns located in whole or in part within the school district. The board hereby confirms those precinct and polling places so established by those municipalities. 2, pursuant to Minnesota statutes 205A.11, when no other election is being held in a school district, the school board may designate combined polling places at which the voters in those precincts may vote in the school district election. 3, by December 31st of each year, the school board must designate by resolution combined polling places. The combined polling places designated in the resolution are polling places for the following calendar year unless a change is made. 1, pursuant to section 204B.172, or 2, because a polling place has become unavailable. 4, if the school board designated combined polling places pursuant to the subdivision, polling places must be designated throughout the district, taking into account both geographical distribution and population distribution. A combined polling place must be at a location designated for use as a polling place by county or municipality. 5, in a school district that have organized into separate boards, members, elections, district under section 205A.12, a combined polling place for school general election must be arranged so that does not include more than one board member election district. We have the combination name is ISD P1 Valley View Elementary School at 849th Avenue Northeast, which would comprise the precincts of Columbia Heights Precinct 1, 2, 7, 8, Fridley W1 P4, Fridley W3 P3, and Hilltop P1. ISD P2 Highland Elementary School, 1549th Avenue, Columbia Heights Columbia Heights P3, 4, 5, 6, and Fridley W2 P3. Pursuant to Minnesota Statutes 205A.09, the polling places will remain open for voting school district elections between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. 7, the clerk is directed to prepare a map illustrating the boundaries of each combined each combined precinct, to post the map of the combined precincts in the administrative offices of the school district, and to file a copy of the map and to certify a copy of the resolution with the county auditor for each county in which the school district is located in whole or in part. And 8, as required by Minnesota Statutes 204B.16 subdivision 1A, the clerk is hereby authorized and directed to give written notice of new polling place locations to all registered voters in the school district whose school district polling place locations have been changed. The notice must be a non-forwardable notice mailed at least 25 days before the date of the first election to which it will apply. There you go. May I have a motion with that forward?
So moved.
Thank you, Laura. And a second.
Second.
And a second by Mary. Any discussion?
I mean, that was a lot to read, so thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Any other discussion? All right, since the resolution, Mary, will you do the roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Simon?
Aye.
Palmer?
Aye.
Lewis?
Aye.
Granlund? Aye. Mueller?
Aye, and the resolution passes.
Thank you.
I need to take a drink there. Next, we have the superintendent contract. Our superintendent's contract is coming up here, and so I would like a motion to approve a new superintendent, a new superintendent 3-year contract with a 0% increase in year 1, 2% in year 2, and 2% in year 3.
So moved.
Was that Laura? That was motion by Laura, second by Molly. Any discussion? Brenna?
We as a board believe that Zena is worth more than we are paying her by an awful lot. But in our discussions, just the level of leadership that you've shown to just be mission-driven and care more about the kids and the school and what needs to happen to make sure our students are taken care of than even your own paycheck, I think is huge. And I just really, really appreciate that level of self-sacrifice and that level of just commitment to this district. And I wish that this was not the choice we had to make, but we really, we appreciate that from you.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenna. Any other discussion? Thank you.
I'll just say I absolutely am so appreciative of working here in Columbia Heights, and I wouldn't ever want to be anywhere else. It's just an incredible district, and I really am energized by the work that we have ahead of us for the next few years in terms of financial pieces, but also strategic planning and strategic road mapping. So there's a lot of exciting things. You know, full pandemic recovery is on the horizon, and I just want to move forward and get beyond that.
Thank you. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
Tonight.
Mary?
I just want to piggyback on what Brenna said. You are a really wonderful leader, and it's been wonderful to see you engage with the community and the students in particular. And I don't know very many other school districts where somebody can say, that's my superintendent, but that happens here. And nothing is beneath you. You are out there and you are committed to our students' success, and that shows. And I wish that we were like, corporations where we could just shower you with money and our staff with money to show our appreciation. And, maybe someday they'll have to do bake sales and all these other things to get finances, and, we will get them from the state. But in the meantime, I just hope you know how much you're appreciated, and the top-down leadership that you show has absolutely been apparent over the last few years, especially with the pandemic. So thank you for everything that you do.
Thanks, Mary. Happy to serve.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, we'll proceed to vote. All those in favor of approving the superintendent contract signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. And our next action item is the appointment of a new school board member. We had our interviews earlier today, and we are to appoint a replacement for school board member Natty Severson. So we have a resolution. This one's much shorter. The resolution for appointing the school board member Natty Severson, whereas school board member Natty Severson resigned from Columbia Heights School Board effective October 14th, 2022, whereas Minnesota Statute 123B.09 subdivision 5 states that the board must be filled by board appointment for the remainder of the unexpired term. And whereas the school board has asked residents of Columbia Heights Public School District to apply for the unexpired term and has conducted interviews of those applying, now therefore be it resolved that Columbia Heights Independent School District Number 13 School Board will hereby appoint Michelle Petway to fill out the remaining unexpired term until December 31st, 2023. I had a motion to move that forward.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Laura and second by Molly. Any discussion?
I think it's worth noting that we interviewed 2 candidates tonight, and both of them were fantastic, and I'm just really hopeful that the person who is not appointed is able to find some ways to continue to impact this district, and that we do connect with her and seek her advice and input as we move forward. So thank you to both of them.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Any other comments or
This was
discussion?
such a hard decision.
Mhm.
Those were 2 great candidates that were so qualified. Both of their voices are so important, and I just thank you both for applying, because it was a hard choice.
Absolutely.
Yep. I think Mary said we're very lucky to have a very difficult choice. So,
Yep.
thank you. Any other discussion? And as if this is a roll call, Mary, can you please do the roll call vote, or resolution, please do the roll call vote?
All right. Zimet. Aye. Palmer.
Aye.
Lewis.
Aye.
Granlund. Aye. Mueller.
Aye. Resolution passes. And congratulations to Michelle.
Just for clarification, she will then, she will be sworn in at the first meeting of 2023 in January.
That's correct. I believe it's January 3rd is that meeting. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And next we have board topics.
It's bedtime.
I have one. One item to note is that, as mentioned, Brenna and I had the subcommittee on community engagement last week. And I wanted to report out from that. Brenna and I had a really good conversation about the committee continuing on to focus on finding ways that we can seek out feedback and information from people within our community, specifically if they are intimidated or uncertain about sharing that information, finding ways to remain anonymous, and to have that Brenna, can't think of the word off the top of my head, but to have that feedback that they could provide to us anonymously, specifically difficult feedback or challenging areas of growth for us, because we would like to hear that, and we need to find a safe space for people to share that. So that's a continued focus of the engagement committee. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about getting that feedback and then just creating systems for action on that feedback and ways that when the community brings needs to us, we can hold ourselves accountable to meeting those needs and fixing the problems. So.
Okay, that was a good conversation. Any other board topics? All right, hearing none, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:24.